Hello, I'm Melbourne from Australia. I would like to introduce Penny Robertson, please. Who is one of the founders of Down Syndrome International and a chairperson of the Board of Trustees. Thank you. I'll see you on Friday night at gala dinner.
Thank you so much. Let's give a big hand of applause for Robert. And can I say, that's what our conference is really about. The minister couldn't have walked in at a better time to hear what we needed her to hear. Even if she didn't quite pick up on the idea of it isn't all about prevention. Anyway, it is my privilege, I think, to represent Rekha Ramachandra this afternoon and to introduce the final session for the day. Following this, of course, we have cocktails. For those of you very close, might get 1 or 2 minutes to race home and change. The rest of you just have to come as you are, I'm sorry. But this afternoon we do have a very interesting tour, a group of people to follow on from this morning's presentation, and honestly, hasn't it been just a fantastic day? And I know that our speakers this afternoon are going to have no challenge in keeping the interest level at the same pace.
Down syndrome. And just to prove that, you may know that the rings in the Olympic circle represent each of the continents. So let's do a roll call and see how many people are here from the different continents, okay? So when I call out your continent, I want you to wave your hands and make as loud a noise as you can so that we can find out which is the gold medal winning continent on this conference. Are you up for it? Okay. Have we got people here from the Americas, North and South? The Americas? That's a bit feeble. Thank you very much, that's a bit better. Let's move across the Atlantic to Europe. Wow, it's a pity you didn't do that in the middle table. But you're getting there. Let's go across to Asia. Very good. And now we've got to go down under, and that's to Australasia. The Australians like to travel, but I didn't think that many of you were coming here. And that's it, isn't it? That's all the continents? Is there somewhere else? Africa! Well, one of the great things about the Olympics is the motto that the people take. And the motto, as you know, for the athletes is that they strive to be swifter, higher and stronger. And in many ways that does typify people with Down syndrome. Certainly when you look back over the last 40, 50 years that I've been involved in this work, you see quite a transformation in the way people think about Down syndrome, or the way people with Down syndrome think about themselves, and the way parents think about them. Through your joint efforts, you have made them become swifter, you've made them higher, and you've made them stronger. They can, in many instances, be gold medal winners. There are many reasons we could give for why that transformation has happened, and it is important that we name them. And these are some of the ones I often refer to when I'm speaking in different places. Advocacy you've heard about. It was the advocacy of parents that made a big difference in my country, Ireland. And latterly, it's the advocacy of people with Down syndrome themselves that's beginning to take over and complement all the work that parents have done. There's the whole thing of early intervention, recognizing that the child has a problem early enough so that you can begin to help the child within weeks of being born and then throughout their early school years. The importance of education, so that young people going to school can acquire the basic skills of literacy, numeracy, being able to move around their neighbourhood safely, all the things that contribute to becoming a more independent, self-sufficient person. We've heard about the medical advances, and they certainly have transformed the life expectancies of people with Down syndrome. And of course, the whole feature of community participation, not hiding people away, as happened when I started to work in this area. But I remember a father in Malaysia telling me that when he took his son with a Down syndrome to a restaurant, he always chose a table in the middle of the restaurant so that other people could see how good his son Fan Fan was at taking his place within the community. And it was that thinking and all those efforts that really have helped and transformed and made people into winners. But not everyone can be a winner. And indeed there's a danger as we come to a convention like this that we get bewitched by the notion that the people who have shared this platform are in some sense the winners and everyone can be like them. But the reality, the cold reality, I guess, is that many more people with Down syndrome continue to be losers in my country, in Australia, in the US, in Canada, just as much as in Zimbabwe, Zambia, South Africa, or wherever. And the reason they're losers is that because there are still dominant attitudes that are real handicaps to them, that hold them back. For example, low expectations. Families can hold low expectations for their young people. They give up on them at maybe too early an age. Society still has low expectations. Professionals can still have low expectations. And indeed, in many instances, the best excuse a professional has for why the child can't speak, can't read, can't do number work, is because they've got Down syndrome. So those low expectations still bedevil many of the opportunities that people require. Oh, well, I put O as obesity, because one of the striking findings we had in a research project at our university was looking at the young people under 8s with Down syndrome and without Down syndrome in Northern Ireland. And you had proportionately more people with Down syndrome who were overweight or obese even before their 8th birthday. And that pattern continues all through their teenage years into adulthood. The poor health consequences of obesity are very well recognised now. And that may well be more of a problem in the affluent north compared to the poorer south, where maybe the bigger problem is actually malnutrition. But in either case, we're still talking about health threats that hold people back. Services, the lack of services, the type of services, and the expectations of services can also hold people back. The stress of trying to get the service you feel you need for your child, and even when you get that service, the stress of wondering, are they doing all that they really could be doing to help your child? And exclusion is still a reality for many people who want to try to get a job, for example, who want to do further training and are told, no, we don't take people like you into our courses or into our workforce. And that rejection that people experience in the form of bullying, whether it be face-to-face bullying, or I even hear now things about cyberbullying and Facebook bullying that can happen to teenagers. Though that sort of sense of rejection is still very real for people in many countries of the world. And one of the challenges we probably face is how do you turn some of those losing attributes? What is it we do to counteract those? Well, part of the reason those still persist, I suspect, is that there is still a great emphasis on Down syndrome being a disability. Now you're going to say to me, but isn't that self-evident? And there's a sense, of course, in which that is true. And we do have to address the disabling conditions. But if you think of Down syndrome as something like ginger hair or brown eyes, you would want to try and develop the talents of people who've got ginger hair in maybe the same way as you want to develop other people's talents. And it's the talents of people with Down syndrome that we're at risk of not addressing because we're so focused on the disabling condition. And this thinking, which comes from a whole approach called positive psychology, led by a person called Martin Seligman, brings home to us this duality that we need to take forward. Because as he says, removing disabling conditions is not remotely the same as building the enabling conditions of life. If we put all our energies, our monies and our talents into removing disabling conditions, finding genes that account for Down syndrome, trying to do therapy on those genes, that will be some help, yes. But that is not going to help develop the enabling conditions of life. And we're now much more wise as to what helps all of us create a more happy, more fulfilled life. And that would just be as true for people with Down syndrome. So I suspect that we need to start to what I would call remap Down syndrome. And each of those are going to stand for a particular letter. And the winning post, what we're trying to achieve, is that people with Down syndrome will have a happy, fulfilled, and self-determined life. They won't have all the same sort of life, because what makes you happy and fulfilled doesn't do that for me. I will never be an Olympian. I'll never be a rugby player. I'll never be a musician. But I can be fulfilled in many other ways. So it's not to produce people who are all like the Sherrys and the Bernos who've spoken to us from this platform, but to give all people with Down syndrome, wherever they live in the world, the opportunity to have a happy, fulfilled, and self-determined life. So what will that mean? Well, the R stands for relationships. All of what I'm about to say applies to every one of us. But what we have to be clever at is how do we make it real for people with Down syndrome? And the way in which we make it real for them in terms of relationships is that very first one between the parent and the child. Deliberately showing a mother, because mothers very often do much, much more of the actual care, and we know it does take a toll on mothers' health. They have poorer health than fathers, they have more stress than fathers would have, so they are actually affected by it. But in all the years I've worked in this field, and the number of parents I have met, one of the most precious things to them is the relationship they have with their son and daughter, and vice versa. Their sons and daughters talk about how valuable the relationship they have with their parents. But it doesn't stop there, of course, because siblings are equally important. And the role models that siblings can provide is a very important element. And in terms of futures planning, one of the key elements in helping people really to develop their potential is to look beyond parent care and look to how other members of the family can help contribute to that care. But friends, of course, people that you're not related to but you build a relationship with, are a critical part. It may be that they also will have Down syndrome. Indeed, your act in front of an audience, of being able to, a sense of belonging, being with a team, and just that sheer joy of being with other people and in their company, that life is good and life will be good for us. So those 5 remapping of Down syndrome are things that are going to create winners. Can you remember what the first one was? It was relationships. Well done. E stands for engagement. M stands for? A stands for? achievement, and P stands for? And that's what we all need in our lives. Not just people with Down syndrome, although I've chosen to focus on that. That's what's going to give us all those happier, fulfilled lives. As Franklin D. Roosevelt said, we cannot build the future for our youth, but we can build the youth for the future. And that's the big challenge we face, not just to address the disabling conditions of Down syndrome, but to give them the opportunities through the remapping that I've talked about that will make their lives happier, more fulfilled, and more self-determined lives. And when does it all start? Well, it starts from now. And I wish you well with it. Thank you.
Wonderful. I think you've remapped all our lives. Thank you. Thank you very much, Roy. Could you give him one more round of applause?